Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Sussex Masterclass. I'm Alex, and this is
Me.
Jamie Smith.
There we are. Fantastic. So before we dive into Sussex, we point of apology. A, for him and his shirt, but B,
usual.
I know we've moved this around a little bit. We've moved some bits backwards and forwards. There's been a bit of a panic getting these wines out. We never thought that it would be so difficult to get wine from just around the corner.
No.
We managed to get wine from Australia, from Chile, wherever, but we've had things set up on pallet smash, things delivered wrong, to the fact that Alex spent last weekend down in Sussex, running around to the wineries to pick wines up to get them out for you. So
this was bottled a week ago. These two are bottled so recently they don't even have labels. So yeah, that's what we're dealing with at the moment. It's this is fresh off the blocks for you. That's the lengths we go to.
Exactly. So should be a lot of fun. And Alex's mate, I don't know, got a little overexcited. He's a little he got excited on Twitter the other day and decided he was going to take over the world. So he's decided to create videos and a slideshow and a presentation. And for those of you who joined us for a while, you know how great we are with technology sometimes. So
please be patient.
Here's hoping. But for those of you joining us for the first time, thanks for joining us. It should be a lot of fun. If you want to put your own tasting notes in, we've got Slido, so you can either scan the QR code here, or you can go to towtc.co.uk/taste.
towtc.co.uk/taste. That's the one.
Or
Indeed.
go to Slido there, and then you can pop your tasting notes in and let us know what you think.
I feel like one of those Blue Peter presenters saying, send it to PO Box 131, but no, we're not.
Butterworth, Middlesex.
Indeed.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but not Sussex. But anyway, so I think what's important is before he goes on to a deep, meaningful rant, put your comments in the chat, because I think this is a tale of many sides and many opinions, what Sussex is, what it means for a lot of people, and what it's creating. So we're going to dive into that a little bit today, or a lot of it, depending how excited he gets. But as we go through the wine, so make sure you get your comments, your questions, your tasting notes. The more you get involved, the more exciting the tasting is, and the less you have to listen to him rabbit on about PDOs and PGIs and DOCGs and weird blends. So let's get wine number one into the glass. Do you think that's a good plan?
that's an excellent starting point. Yep, that seems very sensible to me. So Sussex, we're starting off with Stopham, which is on the west. Obviously, Sussex isn't just one thing. There's West Sussex and there's East Sussex. And this is the country's first protected area. There is a protected designation of origin for English wine, which subdivides into quality English wine and English sparkling wine and quality English sparkling wine. But this is the first regional wine. And English regional wine, quite right too. So what is it? We're trying to explore what is it that made Sussex the obvious starting point for this? Was it the obvious starting point? And how has Sussex become such at the heart of the English wine industry? So we're starting off. I think the first thing to say is that Sussex is super, super famous for its sparkling wines. This is where that whole revolution kicked off. But we are obviously not able to do sparkling wines, so we're exploring the still wines. And Stopham are one of the absolute pioneers in Pinot Gris. It so happens that Oz Clarke also thinks that Pinot Gris and Pinot Blanc are a really cracking opportunity for our country, and that's sort of good. We've got a great question about thinner glass. I'll come back to that in a bit, but I think it's probably more down to the couriers being utterly useless. But anyway, there we are. So
before you get excited, Joel, let people put their tasting notes.
Let's move the slides on. So with the Slido thing, what you can do is when you visit this, you just pop in what you're tasting. So rather than us telling you what you should be tasting, it should be there in front of you. Should be. There we go. Right. Excellent.
On blue bar.
Is it? Oh yeah. Okay. Right. There we go. That's the right one. Now.
He's in.
Thank you. So yeah, we decided to put a PowerPoint together just because we're tarts, and the we is doing a lot of lifting there. But what's the whole point of this? Why are we trying to come up with this protected thing? And like we said, the sparkling wines are going from strength to strength. Beating champagne at their own game, really getting a reputation. And what we were famous for is the traditional champagne method, sparkling wines, right at premium price points and competing with some of the best champagne producers. That is so cool that we can take on people at the absolute top of their game with centuries of history. And the still wines are gaining reputation very, very rapidly. We've got the first One of the Chardonnay we're featuring tonight, an earlier vintage of this, 2018, I think was the first 20-point maximum point perfect English Chardonnay. And I think that's so cool that we're getting that. So there's a real desire to protect our brand. Now, when it comes to that sparkling wine, which is what the real gem, the crown jewels they're trying to do, like we said, it's English sparkling wine. The only problem with that is that we're now starting to see a rise in some different methods, like the Prosecco method, Charmat, Pet Nat, which is this funky. How do you describe Pet Nat?
Chucking in a bottle, hoping for the best.
That's harsh. That's harsh. But there's skill to it because it's so easy to make it go badly wrong.
Absolutely. And I think because there is so many that have gone badly wrong, the ones that are good are really, really good. But there's some really, really horrific ones out there. So you've got the good ones for me are few and far between. But when you find good ones, they're really good.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing that, not all sparkling wines are created the same, regardless of where they come from or what grape there is. There's different methods to get your bubbles in there.
Yeah.
So you've got, what's called the traditional method or method champenoise.
So bottle ferment.
That you find in champagne, you find in some English fizz, and you find in cover, which is where they do the secondary fermentation in the bottle. You've then got the Charmat method, where they do the secondary fermentation in a big steel tank and then go from there. And then you've got things like carbonation, where they can just literally soda stream it and go from there. But we're not doing sparkling today, so we can move on from that quite quickly.
But it's worth just also mentioning that at the simplest end is carbonation, where you take, for example, as Chapeldown do, and there's nothing wrong with this wine. It's a perfectly good, simple, sparkling wine. It's really nice and light. They take some of their Bacchus and they basically put it into the industrial version of a soda stream, and that is fine. It makes a perfectly nice wine. However, if you're trying to protect your brand, you're only really as good as your weakest link, aren't you? So if people are going to go and say, hey, I've got an English sparkling wine, and you're trying to protect it, English sparkling wine meaning the champagne traditional method, having these there sharing the same kind of name is a bit tricky. So there's been a lot of problems. And the real challenge here is that, as Joey and Phoebe are explaining, is that Chapeldown sparkling? Yes. Is it English?
Yes.
Is it wine? Yes. And yet, of course, is it English sparkling wine? Don't be ridiculous. Absolutely not. That makes no sense whatsoever at all. So you've now got some huge producers piling in. There's hoping to get planning approval for a Norman Foster designed winery that's aiming to make 5 million bottles of basically English Prosecco every single year. And that dumping that onto the market is going to make a big difference.
So I just want to dive in very quickly with comments like that, because we've used the term English champagne and English Prosecco, because that kind of it explains the kind of the level, the kind of quality and the style that we might be looking for. What I think is hugely important is we're making great wine in this country. And 15, 20 years ago, English wine came with a caveat. This is pretty good for an English wine. A bit like when I lived in DC, that wine from Virginia got that caveat. It goes, oh, this is pretty good for a wine from Virginia. Right now, and what I'm hoping we see today, and I'm not saying everyone's going to love every wine and every style, but these need to be standalone, really good wines, whether it was French or Italian or English or Welsh or whatever it is, Is this a really good wine? And I think we've got some absolutely outstanding wines here.
I'm loving this.
Regardless of where it comes from. We need to get away from going, a little tick box and everyone gets bonus points because it's English and it's local. The wine's just got to be really good. And that's what's exciting about this.
Quite right too. So yeah. And like we say, there's a whole range of different wines available from Sussex. But why are they so keen to protect their name? Well, a big part of it is that actually the name Sussex is quite famous around the world now, perhaps largely on the backs of Harry and Meghan, who've been going off shouting out about themselves. And
obviously that's obviously not Harry and
that's
Meghan.
Clearly not Harry and Meghan, no, and I don't think South Park would ever dare to sort of suggest that. But that has created a name which is quite sort of it's well known beyond out of the country, when most other wines perhaps are most other sort of counties are perhaps not. So Stop and Pinot Gris, I popped down there to go and visit and have a look at their winery. It's absolutely smack bang in the middle of the countryside. It's just a classic, beautiful sort of farm which has been converted to have a vineyard on it, and they are super proud of their brand new. On the right here, a massive 500,000 litre capacity frost protection system, because when you see at this time of year, the buds are just like in this middle, they've just burst open, they've lost the protective shell which guards them against the frost, and now it's in its most delicate time, at the time of the year where the frost comes along. And if you get frost, that is dead, unless
you've got a 500,000 litre frost protection system.
Exactly.
Is that the right answer?
That is the right answer. So what you do with that is kind of counterintuitive, but you've got these long pipes with spray nozzles all the way through the vineyard. The sheer amount of work and cost that had to go into this to protect the vines at this delicate time of year is astonishing. But if it saves a single vintage from getting lost, like happened in 2020, there was a really bad frost and people had
late.
Late frost. Yeah, it was May, wasn't it? But yeah, those little buds all have to be sprayed, and those tiny little things wobble around and squirt it all, and you get this layer of ice generated on the outside.
And the thing is, you think for those of you who are into wine, you obviously
Yeah.
know how this works. But for those who might, you go, well, why, if it's going to freeze, do I want to spray water on my grapes that will freeze? Surely that turns my grapes into ice cubes, or my buds into ice cubes. Even there's no grapes yet, but you know what I'm saying. But what this does is the water takes the energy away from the freezing, so it does the freezing rather than the bud. So
and if you keep on going like that, and it keeps at low temperatures throughout the day and night, there's not much you can do.
But you've got to, it's those kind of late night, early morning, very, very low temperatures it protects from. If it stays at -8 all day round for 4 or 5 days, you've not got
much you can do.
You've got to make ice wine.
Yeah, well, yes, kind of. So we got some great snack chat notes. This is lovely. There. Oh, yep, sounds great. And when I spoke to the guy himself, what he said about this wine was that it came in naturally. Now, your notes are slightly wrong. It came in naturally at 12% alcohol, potential alcohol. There's no enrichment needed for this. It is also the 2022, just to be absolutely clear. So
we thought we knew what we were getting, and then we picked it up on the day.
They said, "Oh yeah, we've just bottled this one and it's better," so we went for the best one. So yeah, naturally 12%. It's fruity. It's got that real tropical fruit that we're starting to see coming through. Yeah. Peach.
I like this. Yeah,
lychee,
you got those melon. Citrus, that floralness, and it's quite the complete wine. And I think you look at Pinot Gris, and this is why this is labelled Pinot Gris, and not Pinot Grigio. Because it's got this weightiness, this texture would be my feeling. I'm not saying that's a fact. That's because when we've got Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio generally is just light, lemony, drinkable.
Yeah, you wouldn't get any of those.
And Gris has more of that weightiness, that mouthfeel, that richness. And this has got that peachiness, that apricot, and then this beautiful citrus backbone to it. I think it's absolutely lovely.
It's still got that acidity, which some of the 2022 wines lost a bit of acidity. He was totally fine with these. It was harvested in October, would you believe it? Right into October. And yeah, a very low yielding grape compared to a thing like Bacchus or Chardonnay even. This takes a lot of dedication to make it work. And I think they're I met Simon, who's been doing Pinot Gris, I think, in the country probably longer than anybody else, and he went to Plumpton a few years back, and it's great. It's a really nice little vineyard, and they are proper little specialists at this, and they've been sharing their speciality. They've been sharing the knowledge. They've been talking to Oastbrook and telling them how they do their Pinot Gris and what to do with those as well, which is great. It's lovely.
I think collaboration is, we'll get more into like PDO stuff going later, but I think collaboration with a PDO can only be good. God, we're talking 15 years ago when I first started learning about Toro wines in Spain, and I had this wonderful story that there wasn't that many wineries, like a few dozen. It's much bigger now. But what they would do is they would all get round like at the end of vintage, and everyone would bring their wine, and everyone would blind test. No one knew what they were, and they kind of like just critiqued each other's wine. They were just numbered.
Quite right.
And you go, oh, that wine's this wine's that. You could do that with it, and they all learned together. So for me, Toro is one of those regions that you can grab a bottle of wine. You're going to be kind of pretty sure it's going to be decent because it's not like a bigger region like a Rioja where you get really good ones, really bad ones.
Well, I was hearing that even in like somewhere that's really commercial, like California, like the producers all like to get together and do that kind of sort of collaborative critique thing, and because it's so, especially with a grape like Pinot Noir, which they were all discussing at this Pinot Noir conference, it is such a fickle beast that it keeps doing unpredictable things, and so you've got a much better chance by sharing
fickle
knowledge.
beast being unpredictable.
A fickle
like you
beast
with a PowerPoint presentation.
Quite right. But yeah, so I think
tasting notes are good.
Tasting notes are looking great. Oh, do people want to move on to wine number 2, or are we?
I think we should be there.
I think I'm going to finish that off. That was absolutely delicious.
Okay.
So we're going for something completely different now.
So I'll tell you about this because Alex was down a week or so ago, and he was at Bluebell, and we were like, well, we needed one more wine to get into the tasting, and I was in. Well, what was I doing? I was somewhere. I was going to London while he was down in Sussex, and I'm there waiting for the train, and he's calling me, going, I don't know.
I don't know which one to choose.
Help! I've got this. I've got that. I've got this. So he was torn between doing this wine, and they've got another wine called a Chasselas, and I think they're the only people in the country doing the Chasselas.
Yeah, they are, absolutely.
But I told him, let's do the Sauvignon Blanc, Chasselas, Bacchus, Chardonnay, and Merlot blend because I thought it would be cool.
Yeah,
and I don't know.
Is anyone else doing a selection of grapes all into a blend like that? I have no idea.
Has anybody else ever had a blend like this before? If you have,
let us know.
Let us know.
Maybe some from Switzerland. I don't know, but I think that's what we wanted to do with this tasting. We wanted to push the boundaries a bit more because this is a cool place. There is a lot of variety now,
and
but
the Merlot
it's
giving it that
just a little bit of colour there, isn't it? But here is the thing. You know, we've done a few English tastings now, and we've done Chardonnay, Bacchus, Pinot Noir, done a bit of Pinot Gris and Pinot Blanc.
We did a Sauvignon Blanc.
We did a Sauvignon Blanc last week, or the week before, yeah.
But we haven't.
We've never done.
We've not gone silly.
Yeah. So we're going a little bit silly here, and what you need to know is that the Bluebell Vineyard Estate, they also produce a fantastic range of sparkling wines called Hindleap. So have a look out in the supermarket for Hindleap. They are widely available, and it's a cracking wine. It's a cracking wine. So I think I'm going to crack on, talking of cracking, with our little deck. So geographical indications. This is something that's protected in law, and the EU are spectacularly fond of. And they tried to harmonise the way that these are called because they've got all sorts of different names around the world. And you have this hierarchy. You have a protected geographical indicator, and you have the protected designation of origin. And this is trying to sort of basically mean that you can't sort of call a Meursault unless it's made in Meursault. You can't call it a Roquefort cheese unless it's from that traditional region. You can't call it a Cornish pasty unless
I think that's the most important one.
That is indeed the most important one. So this, I thought this was, it's a really interesting point because you've got stuff like Cornish pasty. They make pasties in Devon. They make them just across the border, and suddenly now they can't call it what they've traditionally called it for years.
And they may well be getting the flour from the same place, the meat from the same farmer, the potatoes from the same farmer in Cornwall. But because it's not produced in Cornwall, it can't be a Cornish pasty.
It can't indeed. And so that's a real challenge for them. But that is the problem with these things, because ultimately, if you're going to protect, it means excluding things. You have to exclude people. And whenever you exclude people from the cool club, it gets controversial. And when you have to draw that line, if you've got a vineyard like Clos de Vougeot, for example, where it's marked out by a wall, that's a fairly natural boundary. Okay, fine. But what if you were to make a wall around the wall? Would the wines inside that other wall be any really different?
Or if the wall fell down?
Or if the wall fell down and you made it in a slightly different place. So it's a little bit arbitrary. But there are more than 360 of these Appellation Contrôlées, Appellation d'Origine Contrôlées in France. It's something which people fight over, and perhaps to the sort of extent where it starts to become a bit meaningless because it's a bit hard to remember all of these things. It's one thing if you're trying to do it for, a Bordeaux or another thing if you're trying to do it.
There's an interesting thing of, people who are in it are very excited to be in it.
Yeah.
And the people on the edge. And I think a good example is Marlborough.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no room any more grapes in Marlborough.
No.
And we know how popular Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc is right now. You can't get enough of it. The world cannot get enough of it. So there's people going, oh, could we extend, the Marlborough region? And the people outside of that go, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's have more space because I can then put Marlborough on my wine. And the people inside go, no. Same in Champagne. There's talks about extending, the Champagne region. And the Champagne houses are like, no.
No,
I'd
we don't want
that.
that.
Love to be able to.
And if you expand it too much, like Soave, it just demeans it completely.
Yeah,
so
it may as well be a wine of France. There's no, Italy in Soave, but you know what I'm saying. And you lose that typicity in that place.
So it's odd. It is odd. It's odd by meaning it's different, but is it unpleasant? I found the red fruit coming through really quite enjoyable. Anyway, I'm going to carry on with this because so we're talking back to 1756, where the very first protected sort of region came about. And that was, of course, Port, the Douro Valley.
And they stuck all these stones around. You can still see them today. They've got these boundary stones that kind of demarcate where it is.
Yeah. And now if you get to the point where if you go to Italy, you can have a wine of Italy. It could be a sort of a table wine.
Made with whatever you fancy.
Made with whatever you fancy, really. Not very many
grapes were grown in Italy, and that's about it.
Or at least most of them were. And then you get to your PGI, the Protected Geographical Indicator, and that might be a region like Tuscany. When you get into the PDO, it's got to have a region that is notable for something and has something that binds it all together, like Chianti. And of course, the Italians subdivide this into DOC and DOCG, DOCG allegedly being a bit better. And you can see how, as you go up this pyramid, it gets less and less, and more exclusive.
So yes, a bit better, not always a bit better. More rigorous rules to be able to get that.
I was wondering if anyone was going to mention UGAs. Correct.
Yes, 11 UGAs in Chianti because there's not enough to learn to start with.
Yeah,
so
that's
really important.
Let's make it even more complicated.
It's really important to have an area of geographical uniqueness. I think let's add that on with your sub-regions of Chianti and the difference between Chianti Classico Reserve, and the alcohol levels and all that kind of. And yields. Let's
get to the point. Why are
sorry? That's got nothing to do with Sussex, has it? I'm going off on my high horse about more stuff to know.
You want to protect your brand. You want to protect the brand so that when people pick up a glass of Chianti, they know that it will be a quality wine. It will taste like this, and that's all at the heart of making sure that consumers who are risk averse know that they like what they like. So it's also about raising the quality by trying to stop some of the cost cutting that comes in, because if you can call it a Chianti but you can make it €5 cheaper, then you're probably going to do that.
And you go, well, your yield can only be so many.
Yeah,
so many tons per hectare and things like that. That quality yield.
And the idea is that helps keep the price up and helps the producers be a bit more profitable, which is when I say make more money. I mean, I think for a lot of them, it's making any money at all is a good starting point. So yes, of course, it's all about location. But you can quite clearly see here the type of closure, like the cork, the ripeness of the grapes, the alcohol percentage, how densely the vines are planted, even down to the style of the bottle, but huge number of different factors. And some of these have got this final taste check, particularly South Africa, before they do any export. They insist that this board of people do check the wine and check that has typicity. It is what you'd expect for that, which of course is very subjective, very, very subjective, but it does help you sort of differentiate these things. Within these things, you have obviously a big trade-off. You've got more liberal ones and you've got more controlled ones. Generally speaking, the liberal ones are bigger, the more controlled ones are smaller. But as you move that way, you get more control, more trustability. The quality is more consistent. You've got to remember, with that exclusivity, which is good, people are now focusing more on the fact that it's a Meursault than it's a particular producer of Meursault. And that is great.
I think that's the thing. You get the DOs or DOCG or AOC that and people will say, I like a good Rioja.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
they have no idea who produced it.
Who made it? I like that style because it's and then you go a little bit further. You say, I like a Crianza because then it's got that. It's got to have that amount of oak and that's the style.
Yeah.
which makes it safe. But then on the other hand, as you're going to allude to here,
Yep, it's
in a tough, in a very
perhaps.
hot year when you go, I just want to make this young fruity wine and get it out the door. You can't do that.
No. Or do you know what? I wish that I could
put
choose
some 15% Syrah in this to do something, and you're not able to, depending on the location. So
that is and absolutely correct. It just helps people distinguish between things. Sometimes it's arbitrary, but you've got to do this, because otherwise it's just a big blurry mess, and who knows what on earth you should be buying. So let's have a look at those tasting notes. We've got obviously pretty high acidity, which again this is 2020, so it was this late ripening year, but we did have that really good summer. Remember, it was a cracking summer when we're all stuck at home, but lots and lots of range of different things going on in there, which is great to see. Moving on swiftly, you've also got the role of history, because if you've got a really well-defined and well-known region, let's say, some of the Rhone ones, and there's a real hundreds of years of history behind this, that is going to guide the rules of the PDO. Whereas if you're Sussex, you're probably hoping that your rules will guide what that identity of that region is known for. So which is it? It's a bit of both, but it depends on kind of how old and prestigious your region is.
Yeah, and how adaptable you are to any level of change. You talk about the Rhone, and there's a lot of winemakers in the Rhone getting a little bit scared. It's getting too hot to grow Syrah consistently and well.
True.
It's ripening too quickly in a lot of places. But there's, in places like Châteauneuf-du-Pape, obviously they've got the option, they can blend other things into it.
Right.
But when you've got
talking of Châteauneuf-du-Pape,
it's almost like I knew what was going on.
It's almost like it. So only look, and we're not going to go into the rules of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, but there they are. But what because of that is that when you pick it up, it's going to be rich, complex, powerful. It's going to be a high quality wine. It's not going to be watery or faulty. It's going to be intense and decadent, and you'll recognize it. You would be able to tell if you drink a lot of wine that this is a Châteauneuf-du-Pape. But as you can see, there are those green, blue, light blue, and teal areas which could be literally feet away from vines that are going into Châteauneuf-du-Pape. It's not really that fair on them that they aren't, but sorry, they aren't.
You've got to draw a line.
Them's the rules. You've got to draw the line. Wine number 2, obviously, which is this blend, and quite clearly, it's we've got people who are not a fan of it, and but also very, very interesting to try. And we have an excellent point here, which is that this is the time to innovate. Now, the people who were growing vines in Sussex in the early days, they were growing those German varieties.
Yeah, the
Reichensteiner, Huxelrebe, all sorts of
announcing these at the same thing.
But
that's because they were safe and they knew they would ripe and they knew they would, get some wine. It might not be the most interesting.
So if someone had said this is the Sussex PDO and we only make it from Seyval Blanc, Huxelrebe, and that would have excluded. That would have stopped Ridgeview from
Chardonnay, Pinot Noir,
quite
all those.
So really, really tricky thing to balance. What we have got, just quickly while we're on wine number 2, we have some tasting notes from the man himself who made it, the wonderful Kevin, and one of his assistants, and they were very kind to record a little tasting note video for us. So I'll pop that up now, and you can see if you agree with him.
Hi there, my name's Kevin Sutherland. I'm the winemaker here at the Vineyard Estate in East Sussex.
And I am Rosie Spencer, and I am part of the field and tasting room team.
Here we have the 2020 Estate Blend. This is a varietal mixture of
mainly Seyval Blanc and Chasselas, but also Chardonnay, Bacchus and Merlot.
This was bottled in 21, so it's been in bottle now for a wee while, about 18 months. It is maturing and developing quite lovely in the bottle. Going towards tasting notes, on the nose we have got some citrus, grapefruit, maybe a bit of kiwi fruit coming through.
Bit of blossom, bit of peach.
The peach, yes. It's got a lovely fruity character nose. And on the palate we've got Again, some nectarine. I get a bit of honey coming through. Again, some pineapple, some white melon, maybe a hint of white pepper as well.
General, very well balanced, fruity and floral.
But also right at the back of that, I get a hint of raspberry or plum coming off the Merlot. It's a nice, light, easy style drinking wine. It's a off-dry. It's not medium, but it's on the sweeter end of dry range. It's an ideal wine for drinking outside on a lovely summer's day, or any time of the day one so wishes.
Very easy to drink. Goes down well.
Any other thoughts about it?
No.
No? Just drinking it.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That's great. I think it's lovely to see that. Kevin was one of the teaching staff at Plumpton College a few years ago, and he's still very closely linked to the college as well, which is great. I went around it when I was on the course down there, and it's a really beautiful place. I hope my little drone shot showed you. Especially in the summer, they've got this lake, and you can go and get married there and look out over the lake and over the vines. That's pretty cool. But why did we pick this over the Chasselas? I think the Chasselas was probably a slightly technically better wine, but it was a lot less interesting and distinctive. It was very kind of...
You're really selling the 6 bottles we've got to sell.
Oh, no, it was technically brilliant. But of course, this has so much going on. It's just, and that's the thing. This is it. It's unusual, but good. Now, is it necessarily the one I'll drink every day? Perhaps not. I think if I were going to go and have a cheese fondue, I'd probably go and get the Chasselas, which is lovely. It's really lovely. Great acidity to cut through those cheese dishes, and beautiful kind of ripe lime flavors to it. This is a very important point. There's a cracking steam railway that runs next to it, the Bluebell Railway. And I definitely didn't take a party there to go and ride on Thomas the Tank Engine when I was a kid. Definitely didn't do that, not me. But yes, so wine number 2, utterly out there. I love it. Wine number 3, a lot more conventional, but...
It's Chardonnay.
Yeah. Now, I haven't tried this one. I've only tried the 2018. Now, the 2018... won this 20-point award, which is fantastic. And sadly, there was just not very much of it to sell. Who remembers what happened to the 2020 vintage, Mr. Smith?
So there's a couple of reasons.
Smooth the tasting notes on.
So there's a couple of reasons why Oxley's famous, isn't there? So it's obviously, for those who've been us for a while, you might remember we went down there and did their rosé on a previous tasting. And that Alex has never let me forget it by putting it in the opening credits of me falling off a bench while tasting wine. Not even tasting wine. I haven't even started tasting wine and I fell off a bench. So that's obviously in our opening credits. But also we're like, we're tasting through, and we'd heard that this wine had got the 20 points, and we tasted it was epic. It's like, can we do that for the show? And there wasn't enough of it. There wasn't enough of it because a badger had got into the vineyards and eaten 2 rows of grapes.
Yep.
So this 20-point wine, there would have been a chunk more. But it just shows that badgers have great taste in
wine. Yep, indeed. Now this is obviously we are now on to wine 3, so I can move that to there. But satisfyingly conventional. Now this is obviously it's a simple, well-known, noble grape, but it's grown organically. They are certified organic soil farmers.
They grow about 20% of the organic grapes in the country. Yeah. Oxley, huge into that. And I think
bit of native yeast on this as well.
And I think what's interesting about English Chardonnay, I'm not going to go down into Sussex Chardonnay ever. English Chardonnay, we usually it's kind of like Chablis, it's kind of like Macon, it's kind of like Burgundy. But where I'm going to go...
It's quite rich, that, isn't it?
It is, but I'm going to go back to my stories of other parts of the world. And where we need to get, if Sussex is going to be a successful... And not even if it's Sussex, if it's Kent, if it's Hampshire, whatever a PDO wants to be. Okay, I'm not hedging my bets on one PDO. There's got to be typicity around, and I think there's enough differentiation around the country to have more typicity. But there's a starting point, isn't there? And you can say this is kind of Chablis-esque, this is kind of this-esque.
Yeah.
But I went to Margaret River, and we tasted this wonderful, wonderful wine. And there's a couple of guys, it's got this elegance of Burgundy, or it's got this richness that reminds me of great California Chardonnay. And the winemaker turned around and go, it's amazing to be in that conversation, even to be near that conversation. But what I really want in 15, 20, 25 years' time, to someone to pick up their glass of Chardonnay and swirl it and go, that's a Margaret River Chardonnay.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long it'll be before someone goes, oh, that's a Sussex PDO Chardonnay. But I think we might not be a million miles away before someone's able to pick up a glass and go, that's an English Chardonnay.
Quite right.
And I think that's really kind of interesting.
We've got some lovely comments here. I'm just going through them now. And yes, now it is not deliberate bulk oxidation, but it is all done in oak, which does the micro oxidation. So you do get some of that development of those hazelnut characteristics, not to the extent of something like a sherry, but it really does. They've held on to that, and they've relied a lot on just the lees to protect it against the oxidation, which obviously is not as powerful as using a big old whack of preservatives into it, sulfites in this case. So
I just want to chat in here and put Liz on the spot. To your point. Why not? Is it because it's better than you expected, worse than you expected, or just a different style? What would give away it being English compared to this not getting it with English? I think that's. And if you don't want to be put on the spot, you can tell me to shut up and go away. I'm happy to do that as well.
The badger's got in there in the tasting notes. Excellent. That is good to know.
Well, you know, everyone's paying attention.
But it's got lemon and sherbet in it. I'm going to Austin Powers.
But you know, it goes through mallow. It's got some native yeast in there, so that's why you get this kind of this richness. It sits on the leaves for a bit, so you get this kind of texture. I just think it's a really well made Chardonnay. You know, there is oak there, without it being oaky, and I think this showcases that careful use of oak. Yeah, so Liz, I agree with you. I think a lot of the Chardonnays that we come to expect are very crisp, very mineral driven, and less focus on the kind of the oak and the mallow and the textural side of things.
Yep.
And I think this is a style we're starting to see a little bit more of. 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was definitely very, because it was
do Chablis.
Well, because it was a little bit cooler. It was a little bit cooler. Things were a little bit less ripe. So there was this real kind of push of this high acid. Look, Kathy's in there before me. We just need to bring Kathy on to do these shows. She'd be better with her than me, you see. And it is that real kind of like high fresh acidity. This still has high fresh acidity, tons of it.
Yeah.
But there's more roundness in flavour. So there's more complexity going on now, I feel.
I think so. And I think you can't create that without the raw materials. If we didn't have the knowledge, we hadn't started going for more Burgundian clones of Chardonnay, because most people were planting the kind of the clones of Chardonnay that was designed for making base wines for sparkling. So yeah, it's
So I'm just going to jump in here quickly because we had a chat with Alex had a chat with the winemaker about the Merlot that's wine number 5. And he said there is an option to drink this slightly chilled. So completely up to you. If you want to keep it as it is, open it, drink it. If you want to run back to the fridge if you've not opened it yet and chuck it in for 10, 12 minutes before we get onto it after the next couple of wines, be my guest. So I'm just throwing it out there. So there's the options in there for what we're told by the winemaker.
That makes sense. Let's bring it back to Sussex now, because, you know, why a Sussex PDO? No, that's quite hard to read, so I'm going to make it bigger. But this has all been driven by this producer, Rathfinney. They have created it. He was a student at Plumpton, a financer who did the Bachelor of Science, and he submitted as his thesis this ludicrously over-the-top a proposal for a Sussex-based winery that could take on champagne, and he put it in, and the initial feedback was, "This is a bit unrealistic, isn't it?" He goes, "No, I'm actually doing it. That's my business plan. That's what I'm doing." So he wanted to make Sussex the kind of the flagship wine of the world, which helps, of course. A lot of his rivals like Nightimber have grapes in Sussex, Hampshire, and Kent, so couldn't be in it. But I'm not saying it was cynical much. But anyway, this is the thing. So
you're not on Twitter now.
Somebody said where has it gone? Is there a quality? Right, here we go. Chris, is there a quality control plan for Sussex? So yes, as part of this, all Sussex branded wines have to pass this qualitative assessment. So one by Camden BRI and an independent tasting panel. So they've got to score on a whole range of different characteristics, and I think that's a really, really good thing. So yes, Sussex PDO, it is undeniably the centre of the UK wine industry. There are more than 52 wineries now. Of course, it's home to the university there. It's in the south, which means it's warm and also gets moderating factors from the English Channel. And also, they were the first to push this. They were the first to really try to push this forward. So it was more a question of trying to herd cats. When he started this, there were only 18 wineries that were getting involved. And it's been, I think it was 7 years he had to work on it to push it through to become a PDO. So it's been a heck of a lot of work for him. I'm going to quickly show just a minute and a half video that shows a little bit about this. It's very, very simple, but I will let you watch it anyway.
I tend to think of the village of Ditchling as the centre of the English wine industry by weight. It's around halfway between West and East Sussex, and it's a little bit closer to the coast, just like the majority of the vineyards. What started off as a tiny industry saw Nyetimber and Ridgeview breaking new ground with their growth of Chardonnay, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier to make champagne-style wines. They correctly reasoned that the cooler climates of England were well suited to making the light, low-alcohol base wines with great acidity that go on to make fantastic sparkling wines. Ridgeview lies just to the north of Ditchling and now has a few other vineyards to choose from. About a mile south, you rise up towards the Beacon. Climbing up onto that and onto the chalky South Downs, you find some sensational views out over the countryside, which is now checkered with vineyards. Heading a couple of miles east lies Plumpton College, where most English winemakers learn their trade. This has its own winery, its own research laboratory and vineyards where the students study and practice viticulture and enology. If we look from west to east, we see two real clusters, plus Rathfinney's new vineyards off to the east, right on the downs themselves near Alfriston and the Seven Sisters. But look at how many there are. Seeing this picture, it's incredibly easy to understand how this area with its chalk and sandy soils, picturesque bluebell woodlands and many microclimates caused by the interaction between the English Channel and the hills can make such a brilliant place to grow grapes.
I loved that. It was such a glorious day just looking out over this, and
wasn't as pretty as Leighton Buzzard.
One to visit every week of the year. I think that is spot on. So yeah, it is. It's a cracking place, and that is, I think, why they've done so well with this. Let's have a look at some of the other questions. So it's pretty close to the sparkling PDO rules. Yes, it is. They go a bit above and beyond. They go for a great deal more. So I think it's 18 months of bottle aging versus 9 months for the English sparkling PDO, and they've got stricter chemical tests they've got to pass, which I can sort of move on to. I can't remember whether I'm supposed to move on to that or not. Yeah, I think we are. So let's have a look at what these rules are. But first, why did Mark Driver, the owner of Rathfinney, try to do this? And it's quite hard to see, but he says, in 10 years' time, you'll walk into a bar or restaurant in Tokyo, Beijing, New York, or Paris, will be asked if you'd like a glass of sparkling champagne or a delicious glass of Sussex. Now, I can recommend the Rathfinney, he says. And he also said, taking into account some of the criticism of, well, this is just a bit of a random boundary to pick a county, he goes, there are some geographical features. There are the marshes over both in Romney and on the east, and on Havant to the west, which kind of blocked off this and provided a kind of a different area before a lot of it was drained in Sussex. I'll get that. But as you can sort of see from the map, it's a kind of a wide, thin county. I think that that geographic thing kind of describes the south bit of it very well, but perhaps not so much the north of it. And, that's where a lot of these vineyards we're visiting today are. And this is, here we can see Ridgeview, obviously. We've got Stopham over to the west, Bluebell's just up northeast of Ditchling and of Plumpton, and Osbrook and Oxney are right over to the east there, with Rathvinny just down very near the Seven Sisters, near Eastbourne. It is a really beautiful place to visit. So that's his view on it. Now I stuck it up on Twitter, and if anyone wants to see this, they can try to dig it up. But it ranged from some proper abuse like this. This is from Jamie Good, the wine writer. This is utterly silly. It's got to be delineated by a physical site property. You couldn't pick Sussex wines out of a lineup containing Kent and Hampshire. Political boundaries are poor. Use river valleys. Susie Atkins, MW, agreeing. It's great to see there were trailblazers, but the PDO's silly. What's the point of defining a region which excludes chalk soils but includes non-chalk soils? All good questions. And Emma B, who was working at Bolney, I've seen this as well. You drive down the M23 and the A23, the climate changes so dramatically as you come over the Weald, you just start seeing this sort of this mist settling down on one side of it, and then you've got the downs peeking up over the end. These are totally different subregions. So there's a lot of criticism, but John Atkinson, MW, you've got to start the process somewhere. Otherwise, the alternatives are free for all. That's fairly pragmatic, says Dave Round, MW. Donalde, the sommelier, he would prefer to have more sort of clay soil driven or chalk soil driven things. I think that's a very sensible view myself. Emma B goes back and says it's easier to tell by the winemaker than by the region these days. Kind of agree with that. Joe Fattorini, now I'm going to try to read what he said here. The Sussex PDO is becoming modern wine's filioque controversy. PDOs will always be a theologumenon. Absolutely. Yeah. That's something theological, and it's something to do with whether the Son is included in the Holy Trinity, raising him up to the same level as the Father, apparently. But I think it means it's basically a philosophical, almost religious kind of issue for this. So, yeah, I mean, and Mike Best really nicely summed up. I agree with a lot of criticisms. It will be one of those things where we'll look back in 20 years' time and go, thank God we did that. And Mark Driver says 80% of the wine is sparkling. So that's really where the kind of rules were focused. So lots of viewpoints. It's all very tricky. So yes, Kathy, I am very happy to share this slide with you if you'd like to. For the rest of us, don't worry. All that's important is that the Sussex sparkling rules are a lot stricter than the Sussex still rules. You've got a whole range of different grapes you can make it from and still call it Sussex still wine. The standards are a bit more relaxed on that side, but it's definitely a big step above in terms of the ripeness requirements and the aging requirements and everything than the standard English thing.
Really?
So there is something in there. There's something in there. It's true. Probably we should feel like we should be moving on to wine number 4. So let's get back to this year. Yeah, let's have wine number 4.
I hope this is wine number 4. There's no label on it.
Is it pink? We can't tell because they
Dark
put it in a
glass.
green bottle, which is right. Oh, it's a good colour.
It is a lovely
Look at
colour.
that.
Well, I think, this diving in on Sussex PDO, we'll talk about the rosé in 1 second.
Should I bring one quick look at the tasting notes for this? Toast, honey, vanilla, earthy, hazelnuts.
It's a very rich style, isn't it, for what you might maybe expect.
Yeah, there's something just a little bit different about like it compared to some of those Burgundian ones, though, isn't there? It's got like that kind of, rather than it just being a brioche kind of red note, it is almost like a sort of a crumpet.
Yeah,
say. That's my highly technical term.
Let's talk about clay soil versus chalk soil, or this versus that, clay versus clay. Go to Argentina, yeah. Go up the Andes, and if anyone was on our high altitude Argentina when we talked with Martin, they dig these pits, and on one side of the pit it's clay, on the other side it's chalk. You go up 100 meters, and it's 20 degrees colder, and that's all in Luandacuya. It's all there. So I get why there's got to be some delineation. But
it's all a bit arbitrary.
And I think my best point about we got to start somewhere.
Yep.
And as long as this PDO isn't set in stone till the end of time, and it can be reviewed and it can be updated,
and there can be smaller PDOs that become more concise and meaningful.
Within that,
this is the quality area of it. Yeah.
But you talk about that, we talk about these other regions, and and I'm going to go Argentina again. We used to go Argentinian Malbec,
Yeah.
and then we knew about Argentinian Malbec from
Mm-hmm.
Mendoza, and then there was Salta, like long way away, and now we're Argentinian Malbec with these sub-regions, and then sub-regions. That's where we're going to get to, I think.
Yep, absolutely.
Sussex is a nice start, and then there's maybe a Sussex PDO, a Hampshire PDO, Kent PDO, whatever, and then maybe there's a South Downs PDO which encapsulates all of that.
Boom.
So we then have a geographical PDO that encompasses
matches those bits,
different things, and go, okay, that's that. Napa Valley has sub-regions, and you've got Carneros that goes over Napa and Sonoma at the south of it, because it's got its own. But so if we don't start somewhere,
we've got to start somewhere.
We start with English wine, okay? Free for all for anybody.
Yep.
I just think we've got to be a bit smart with naming.
Agreed.
Like, English sparkling wine is a nightmare because it doesn't help the consumer.
It's just too generic. So, Liz Knight, are other English wine regions now pursuing PDO status? Yes. So, for those of you who've been with us a year, we went to the Crouch Valley in Essex last year. That is a very deep into the process of becoming a PDO, and I fully support that one. I think that's an excellent idea. There was somewhere else that was mentioned to me, and I've managed to forget now.
Camel Valley going after.
Oh gosh. I'm gonna tell you what, you talk about wine number 4 while
Alex could come prepared with his 84
okay,
slides, but he's on Google again. Okay, so where are we heading?
I'm on Twitter.
So we are heading to Sussex.
We're heading to Sussex, yes,
Sussex,
for a change, but
Sussex,
East Sussex.
We are at Oastbrook. For those who've been with us for a while, we did Oastbrook last year and went down and saw America and Nick, and they've got an absolutely fantastic property. And when you talk about people wanting to get into wine tourism and it being more than just a vineyard and grapes, these guys have got it spot on. They've got, you can stay there. Mm-hmm. They've got, a massive barn, dining facilities, glamping. It's on the back of the O. You can go and like kayak or canoe down the Oast. And it's absolutely picturesque. Oastbrook is an old Oast house.
Yeah, a big Oast house. Well, you'll see America describe that herself.
It's really cool.
Now, this has recently been reviewed by Great British Wine. He also got sent an early unlabeled bottle of this. Wow, that's really cool, isn't it? It's intense fruit. It's 100% Pinot Noir. And this is all very, very handmade now. They get their sparkling wines made elsewhere, but they now make all of this wine by hand, husband and wife team in their own winery.
Absolutely, and I think it's a little bit deeper in colour. And Rosé has had this whole kind of got to be so light, so see-through Provence. Tastes like water. This has got some oomph about it. This has got some flavour, some raspberry, some strawberry. This is cool, and I want to see this style of rosé happen. It's a punchy rosé.
This is America's style. So she's called America because she was born on the 4th of July, of course. That she is a Brazilian-born lady. She's wonderful, and this is her personality in a glass, isn't it? That is fabulous. I really, really like that. I think that I'm going to get a case of that. So yes,
well, quickly, because
exactly. That is wonderful. Lots of super intense fruit there.
Loads of acidity as well. It's just mouth watering.
Things like that rose hip, really just something that's a bit more a
bit of substance to it. A rosé with a bit of substance,
and
it's the fruit sweetness without being sweet. It's not sugary, it's not syrupy, it's not sticky, but it's rich.
You're going to get him going on about rosé and turkey now, but that sweetness to go with the cranberry sauce.
Is it too early to plan for Thanksgiving?
No, it's quaffable, but it's got a complexity and acidity that allows it to really have something about it. It's not just like those super simple kind of
One of the best rosés you've tasted. That is quite. I think this is magic. This is worth your drive down on bank holiday.
It was. It was. So the replacements got, first of all, well, I won't bore you, but needless to say, I trekked down there with the kids in tow, and immediately got captured by the amazing personality of America and Nick, her husband, and the kids were suddenly off running around doing God knows what. And
Driving tractors.
Nick was giving me barrel samples of the 22 Pinot Noir, which was super, super punchy. It's really good. Obviously needs a bit more time still. It was in the process of mallow at the moment. So you could listen to the barrel and it's popping away and crackling away with the bacteria doing their thing. It's awesome. So yeah, rosés, they don't all just taste the same. They don't.
They don't, and light rosé isn't always better.
No.
So
We're doing pretty much perfectly for time. I'm quite impressed. That's going rather well for once. Excellent.
You said that far too soon.
I did indeed. Yeah, something's going to blow up. But yeah, what do you guys think? I mean, what would you like to? Is rosé a wine you tend to go for with food at all? I see that Finn's got a great suggestion there, but
Christmas dinner,
I think
done
rosé is just so often just something to drink on a hot day in the garden, and it could be more than that. But I don't know what people go for.
I think rosé gets a bit of a bad rap sometimes because people think rosé is July, August, and that's it. I think rosé it's a year-round wine. It's when it's made with the same level of care.
Yeah.
It's less skin contact than a red. Well, white has no skin contact, so does that mean it's not made carefully? It doesn't have. We don't put it in Lake Barrel. Well, nor do you do New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc generally. So I don't know why rosé gets this. I think there's a lot of times you go, red wines the most premium, probably followed by sparklings, then whites, then dessert wines, then rosé.
Unless you're going for something like these crazy sort of, the oaked ones from Garus and things like that.
But that's a one-off, overly expensive stuff. But this
if you do like that style, actually you should check out Kent and Fergus from the Hush Heath winery, Balfour Estate. That's
Kent, we're Sussex right now.
I know we're in Sussex now.
Get back over your border.
Okay, all right, back over the border. That's not in the PDO, definitely not. Yes, this I could not agree more. I could not agree more. We've tried some fantastic rosés from England. I think it's perhaps we did the Oxney rosé last year, and that was just beautiful.
What's interesting now is we're starting to see people planting clones specifically for still wines. A lot of it used to be they planted Chardonnay and Pinot Noir for sparkling, and the stuff that didn't make the grade for sparkling ended up in the still wines. Yeah, and they were all a bit.
Just remembered someone asked a question about clones as well, and
okay, you best have the answer.
I don't have the answer to you off the top of my head. Let me go back and find that out for you. And I'm absolutely 100% sure that Kristen will be delighted to tell us. So we'll answer the postcode. Yes, we will postcard. We'll get that back for you. So yeah, lots more interesting things going on, and people being a bit braver with a bit of skin contact, going, okay, so what if it gives me a bit of color? If it gives me more complexity and flavor, then that's great. So, yeah.
I think that's why it's important, we go PDO rules and regulations to have that flexibility to let's not go, you can only have 24 hours of skin contact. If someone wants to I'm not saying that's not a rule, but let's not be restrictive for the sake of being restrictive. Let's not say, oh, you can't do this just because no one else is doing it yet.
Yeah. So I think on that note, talking of creativity and pushing the boundaries out, I think it's time to deal with wine number 5.
Our second Merlot of the day.
Second Merlot of the day. Now, the Discover Series England tasting, we did a Sauvignon Blanc that had been grown in a polytunnel. This is not grown in a polytunnel. This is a variety of grape that is designed to grow in Bordeaux, where it is an awful, awful lot warmer. But when people planted when Ridgeview and Nye Timber planted the Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, that was a big risk because nobody thought that ever would get ripe enough. It just didn't have a chance. You're now starting to get things like Merlot planted in Burgundy. And we're not that far behind parts of Burgundy. So could it work? Well, that was the question. The last time I tried this wine, it was in the form of a rosé. And it was it was okay. It was
a
interesting.
fruity, simple
Yeah, a
rosé.
fruity simple rosé. Now, so this is this is a red Merlot from Sussex. We do have another short tasting video from Kevin. So what I might do is
Let's move the tasting
let's
notes
move
on
the
so
tasting
people
notes
put their
on.
opinions in first, because I think this is going to be quite the
this is going to be
Marmite
divisive.
wine.
Yeah, absolutely. But
So we'll put Kevin up first.
hear it
before
out.
we say
Remember, this
anything.
is a hard wine to make, a very hard wine to make, and it is, again, hardly anybody is even trying to do this. So they can only make it in some years, and yeah, it will be divisive. But it's an expensive, difficult wine to make, and they do it out of pure bloody mindedness. So let's hear what Kevin has to say about it, which is that one. See you in a sec.
This is our Ashdown Boundary Block. It's a still Merlot from 2020. In 2018, we managed to produce a still Merlot as well, along with a sparkling ruby. It was aged in oak barrels for 19 months, and it's a nice, light, medium-bodied red wine.
Yes, the Merlot itself, as Rosie said, aged in barrels. They've been old barrels and some reconditioned barrels, so it's a mixture of about 50-50. The idea of the time in oak is to pair the wine with some oak flavours, vanilla, but not to be too overpowering. On the nose, therefore, we've got some plum, raspberry, bit of cranberry,
Blackcurrant.
vanilla.
Blackcurrant.
There's a hint of oak in there, obviously. Some black pepper as well. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
No, that's good.
On the palate, we've got
Ripened cherries.
some spice, cooked black cherries, raspberries, red apples, lots of black fruit coming through. It leaves a nice little soft finish on the palate. The tannins on this are nice and soft, and they're not too astringent, so they're not leaving your palate too dry. There's a good balance to this.
Yeah, it's unlike a Merlot you might have had already. It's a very warm weather Merlot. Perhaps if you're not wanting a full-bodied red wine, but it's warm weather, this is probably a great option for you. At the same time, if you are a white wine drinker, this could be a great gateway to red wine.
It's also possibly ideally to have slightly chilled, not cold, but slightly chilled.
So yeah, controversial, different, a very different style of Merlot to your Chilean Merlot.
The question is, would you blind taste this as a Merlot?
Well, I mean, you have to go through it like kind of. No.
You know, it's got this. Yeah. It's got this lovely tangy. Like you look at the taste now, black cherry. It's got this almost like sour cherry. I agree. On the nose, there's
something a little bit that really gets you first. That sourness there,
but you get a bit of swirl, get a bit of oxygen in there.
This is wonderful. I love it. This is a proper Marmite wine. I'm finding the more I drink of it, the more I'm really starting to like it.
That's kind of your
I wasn't expecting that.
You said the same about Jägermeister as well.
Yeah.
So the more I drink it, right now, done.
It is a very, very natural style. It's in that natural color. It's quite clearly unfined. If it looks a little bit cloudy, so does the fresh bottle sample that we've had. It's got that almost natural winemaking style to it.
I call it textural.
I think it's so refreshingly different to any other red wine I have ever drunk, and so why not put it in there? You've only got 100 ml of it. It's just a bit of fun. So, do you know what? If you find out, exactly, it's surprising how good it shouldn't work, but they've bullied it into something.
And the thing with this, like, without being the climate change downer, there's two things with this.
Mm-hmm.
New wines, you can get fruit after 3-4 years. Yes, you can, but you start getting really good fruit at 6 or 7 years. So this is only going to get better as it goes. If it gets a little bit riper, it's going to get a little bit riper, a little bit richer. Yeah. So this can only go in one direction.
In one direction, yeah, and get better and better as the.
So if you like it now, it's going to go there. So this is 19 months in oak barrel, so it gives that kind of richness, that roundness. It's got this great, like this zippy sour cherry thing. I just think is absolutely fantastic.
It's almost straight out of the bar in Shoreditch, isn't
it? And I completely agree with the slightly chilled. This isn't like a California Merlot or a Bordeaux. This is more like a Beaujolais style-wise, with that kind of like that funkiness, that kind of sour cherry, that banana-y, bubblegummy kind of thing going on. Not carbonic maceration, not at all. But that kind of drink it slightly chilled, bit funky, cool kind of wine.
It's a bit cool, complex wine.
It's more like Gamay than it is like what you would expect Merlot to be, in my humble opinion.
When Kevin was showing us around the vineyards back a few years ago, I think it's fair to say that the owner encountered some strong views from all the viticultural experts who said, I don't really think that Chasselas and Merlot should be grown in this little spot in Sussex. He goes, I don't care. I want to do it. And why the hell not? And then if you get a talented winemaker who comes on and takes up the challenge, I think it's great.
That's what makes wine interesting, isn't it? And going back to rules and regulations, if it's not on the PDO list and it's great, that's a shame, isn't it? And,
it is.
There's someone, but
it doesn't stop you making it though. And plenty of people in PDO regions of France make a Vin de France.
Super Tuscan was the original.
Of course.
So
I think absolutely right. I mean, it tastes so fabulously light, and yet the flavor complexity is there. So he hasn't obviously with that little video gone deep into the sort of the hows and whys, but from talking to him on a technical level, he is a very technical winemaker, and he likes to get variety by using a lot of different kind of yeast. And really fun wine. And I'm just
Neil.
Sometimes you've just got to
imagine how good it would be after you bought 3 cases from us. Look at that.
Or from the winery themselves, because if you just want to buy 3 cases of it, then you might as well go straight to them. They'll drop it off at your house. And there's a very lovely girl called Freya who will organise it all and make it happen, as she made all of this happen for us on very short notice.
Wow, you just put us out of sales, didn't you?
But if you want a mixed case, buy from us. I've completely lost where we were. This is a complicated one, isn't it? But yeah, there are. Yes, yeah. I mean, there are all sorts of flavor compounds that come from the yeast. I suspect Kathy knows more about this than I do, but you're particularly developing a group of chemicals called esters, which are really come from the sort of the yeast development and working with some of the cool things that do it. You can even get, you aren't allowed to use them in this country or Europe, but some of the crazy, funky American winemakers are using these genetically modified yeast, which are designed to specifically create an individual flavor.
Very like banana?
The world of,
this.
There you go.
Would you like key lime pie? Use this. It's almost like an infusion.
And they're quite popular in the world of beer, especially, but not allowed in wine production over here at the moment. Excellent, that's great. I like that. Well, enjoy it, Neil. Enjoy it, because we are obviously going to be going on to something completely different with wine number 6. So I think it being about 10 past, we should probably
go to Pinot o'clock.
It's Pinot o'clock.
Is this? Who knows? No label.
If you haven't started that yet, don't you worry, because we're going to put America on to describe Oastbrook in her own words, and so you've got plenty of time.
We'll move the tasting notes on.
Yep.
We'll get some wine in the glass, and we will come and meet you
at your own speed, and we will see you
momentarily.
Where is it? The wonderful America. Over to her.
I used to work in a bank for 14 years. Now I'm a farmer. Okay, come, have a look. We try to make something more high-end, so people come here and actually feel as a destination. We also want to make a club. When you go to California, to Sonoma, and have a place to go and enjoy this high quality, and you can bring your family, your friends, your kids in the field. That's what we want to do. So on here we have 18,000 vines planted. Pinot Gris, we have Alsatian Pinot Gris. And then our wines, we all make 100% Pinot, so we don't mix it. On the back of that, we have some glamping. Again, we're gonna have tea area for the glamping as well, so you can sit, relax, play some guitar, and you're gonna have a fire pit in front. And also we plant the Grey Nichols willows to make the quicker that. Next door neighbor is a kayak school. Because I decided to be a beekeeper, so what I'm doing here, every other row I planted red clover. Clover is very good to the soil. It's nitrogen fixation, so they take nitrogen from the atmosphere back to the soil. For the bee, we can save the bees, but the bee loves the clover and make amazing honey. So we want to make everything. Maybe in the future, I want to make some skin products with grape seeds. So we use all the things on the side. And then as we want to have it as a destination, we build up the Hobbit house, so you can come and stay. The door itself is 250 kilos. Everything is in oak. You have a bar, it's self-catering. When you come in, you're gonna have all the Lord of the Rings, all the Hobbit, everything there ready for you. This year we're gonna have opera in the vineyards. We're gonna have Brazilian tapas and then samba. We're gonna have Midsummer Night's Dreams. When my husband said we're gonna live in an old house, I said, this is not the old house, this is a castle, it's a Cinderella castle. So that's my Cinderella castle. So that's Nick.
I'm Nick, this is my better half American.
Nick also did plum.
She's the more beautiful one of the two.
That's not
She
true.
says she's the better winemaker too.
I'm the only person driving the tractor here. We are very close to the castle, so that used to be sandstone manufacturer. And then also, so the Roman used to use this field on the west of the field to melt iron. Yeah, single wheel. You can see here that is the Chardonnay. It's going to the 4th year, so you can see that it's it's doing very well in the soil, so it's very established. And then this is the Chardonnay. What we're gonna start to do at the moment in the field, we're gonna do the bud wrapping. So we go back here, you can see how that it started in fluorescent.
Yeah.
Like this time of the year, you go around one by one, and I have 18,000. And my bees, my bees are there.
So how are you avoiding all the sort of mildew and problems like that then? You know, especially, you know.
Can you see there?
Uh-huh.
A lot of people, they bud rubbing, they leave the
leave
leaves.
it.
I take all out. Any cane that comes up here, I take out and I burn it. I do most of the job by hand, and then I'm in the field every day. I have a PA tree as well, qualification and spray. Here you can see the Pinot Blanc. The Pinot Blanc has not been affected by the frost. The reason that you have single gill is because I want to concentrate in just one area to avoid, problem. Every single vine I treat differently. When I prune, if I see that the vine is very vigorous, I leave more buds. If I see that is low in vigorosity, I leave less buds. So basically, in vineyard, in viticulture, less is more. If you prune wrongly, it will take 3 to 5 years to fix a mistake done. Yeah, guys, so I have some wine now.
Yeah, that sounds an excellent plan.
Hello? What's your name?
Annabelle.
What are you doing, Annabelle?
Driving the tractor.
Really? Is it difficult?
Yeah.
I'm not going on the whole dinner. You go, Annabelle. Say bye-bye to the camera.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, those were my children. I left them. I went off to take a barrel sample. I turned around and I've got a 4-year-old driving a tractor. It was wonderful.
Get them in the industry. Get them in the industry.
We have a great suggestion there of an OWTT tasting day at Osbrook. That's a fantastic idea, and I'm sure they would be completely on board with that. So, as well as this crazy Hobbit house, where, by the way, for those who haven't seen the inside of it, this is what it looks like inside. It's not called the Hobbit house any longer because
Tolkien got a bit upset.
Tolkien's estate got a little bit upset with that and decided they couldn't call it Hobbit, which is perhaps surprising. So they changed the name to Halfling Hideaway. At which point the Tolkien estate registered a trademark for Halfling Hideaway that related to rental property. And so then sued them again. And so now it's the Vineyard Hideaway. But they also have this beautiful lakeside accommodation here, which has got a hot tub outside it and 2 bedrooms and is beautiful. And they're building a treehouse to go with the cricket bats and the glamping and the beehives and the samba and the canoeing and
swimming pool.
Yeah, there's a swimming
Tennis
pool and a
courts.
beach bar and tennis courts. Yeah, it's a fun place to visit.
quite a night out.
But
and good wine to drink.
But
You
this is
can't go wrong.
the thing. Like that is you've got to do that to become a profitable thing. I had a really interesting chat with Nick about what is the scale that a profitable winery can be at in this country. You've got to either go super massive and not care about anything. If you're too small, then you've got to charge huge amounts of money. There's a kind of sweet spot, but doing these kind of things helps bring in money to the estate that allows you to do the cool wines. And so they do spend like the sheer number of oak barrels they've got there. From what do you remember how empty that winery was when we first visited?
Yes.
It's like our warehouse now. It is full of pallets, absolutely full. And so many barrels everywhere, new equipment, vast investment in caring about the wine. And it shows 2021 was a very, very difficult year. And yet, check this wine out. How have they made a good red wine in 2021? Not just good wine, a great Pinot Noir.
I think the other point is, people, wine is wine. Yeah, it's grape juice at the end of the day. I say running a wine business, great point. But people want to have this connection. And if you go to Oastbrook and you stay in the Hobbit house and you do that, and you go, you know what, I'm going to drink Oastbrook for life. That's going to be your thing, isn't it? And people go on holiday and they go to a winery and they go, oh, I love that wine. Can you get this for me? It reminds me of when I went there. And having this wine tourism, I think, is going to be key. So you go, people go to California and they do winery tours, don't they? You go to Australia, you do a winery tour.
Oh, it's 2021. I don't know who's written 2020. Oh my goodness me. We normally, so I'll tell you what we normally do is we send a bottle. We send our production manager down to go and check the notes of what we're supposed to have been sent against what we've actually been sent. But when it doesn't have any labels on it, it's rather hard. But I promise you, I know it is the 2021 vintage, so it's even more of an impressive achievement that they managed to make it in that difficult year. The 2022 is in barrel at the moment, and like I say, it's tasting really crunchy. Fantastic. It's crunchy, but it's so the fruit intensity is off the charts. I think it's really, really impressive. You talked about soils and how it changes across the vineyard. They are not on chalk. They are primarily on sandy soils, and yet it still changes so much. Some parts of it, you've got an awful lot of clay, and other parts, you've got a kind of almost like a peat bog underneath it. So you're saying that when you drive the tractor over that part, it wobbles from side to side because the ground is almost liquid underneath it, which is very disconcerting. So yeah, it's a really cool thing.
Yeah, Wiston, as Liz put that, Wiston makes some great wines, some absolutely fantastic. And I think the thing is, I still believe, English wine.
Right over there on the very far left, that's Wiston.
Sparkling is still where we're going to compete on the world stage at the moment.
Yeah,
I really do.
Yeah.
But the stills aren't far behind. And if the sparklings have been the trailblazers to get people excited about English wine, not only within the country, but also in the export market, that's really, really helpful to bring the stills along. So let's not forget about the stills.
No.
Because, we've been comparing our sparklings to those of champagne.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can get there with the stills and we start, being able to compare, our Pinot Noir to Burgundy or California or Oregon, and we're able to compare our Chardonnay to Chablis, and we're able to compare our, Pinot Gris to Alsace. I'm not saying that we need to go after that style, but to that quality level and that level of consumer approval and identification, I think we'll do really well. But that's why we need to have these level of PDOs to have some kind of standardization almost. This
agreed.
From here will be like this from here will be like that.
I want to go back to Finn's point, which is disconcertingly early to drink, but with great potential. And obviously a wonderful food pairing, as we've come to expect from the wonderful Finn. Early to drink. So this was something which Nick was very, very.
I don't know. It's just gone 9 o'clock.
Well,
Oh,
but what you were
early to
saying in
drink.
terms of early in its lifetime to drink, I think he was specifically mentioning the Chardonnay because he said, drinking the 2020 Chardonnay is like infanticide. It's got so much aging potential, and I think it's the same with this. Perhaps, is it a Pinot that you'd lay down for 20 years? I wouldn't have thought so, but it does. This is early.
5-7 years.
5-7, perfect, absolutely perfect for that.
But
So,
the thing is, it's still delicious to drink now, and it comes so much of like wine aging comes down to personal preference. There's certain things that need a bit of time, but this, if you like that bright, high acid, fresh fruit flavor, drink it now.
Quite right.
As it goes, as it ages, you might get a little bit more smoke, a little bit more tobacco, a little bit more kind of like the fruit will become a little bit more stewed, a little bit more supple. And if you like that, hold on. But if you don't like that, drink it now. Get on with it.
Quite right. Okay, so we didn't really come to much of a conclusion with our little deck. This is not a long part of it. You've been so patient, so tolerant. Thank you. I hope it's been vaguely interesting. But I thought it'd be quite interesting to go, how does the Sussex PDO compare to some of these other ones? Because, in terms of price, it's up there with a premium one like a Chablis. Now, with your Chablis, it's a high quality, it's a familiar name, it's from a village which has got a pretty well-defined boundary around it, which is a small region. And across that small region, there's not huge differences in the climate. It's going to be Chardonnay, there's not going to be over oat, it's going to be mineral and citrus with good acidity.
And relatively premium.
Yeah. Now, that's my kind of PDO in my head. That's my kind of PDO. And Jamie said, but what about Navarra? Because that's a whole region of Spain. And that's not quite as prescriptive. So, what makes a Navarra PDO wine?
Well, because it's flat, it's relatively warm, it's got this
influence of the three different
climates, and it's based on an area that's not become a sub-region somewhere else.
But so many different styles within
that. Step up from being a Vino de Mesa.
Yeah.
So it's from a particular place. So. But I think that kind of shows, where you can go. You go into Burgundy and you can say
Van de Bourgogne,
Van de Bourgogne, or you can say Côte de Beaune, or you can pick a particular vineyard.
Yeah.
And it really depends how far you want to go down the rabbit hole and how precise you want to be. So I think Sussex PDO is a good starting point. Is it perfect? No. But I think it sets good grounds for English wine, for other regions to go for a PDO status and kind of take their learnings from it and be able to pick and choose and go, that's
there are
cool.
definitely lessons to be learned. There was a committee effect that happened. You can't exclude Reichensteiner because I've got a whole field full of Reichensteiner. So yes,
and everyone needs to grow, and everyone's got to grow together and learn together. But and I'm not anti-Reichensteiner when I say this. If we work out from this that Reichensteiner for 10 years' time isn't what the Sussex PDO is about, that has to get written out.
Somebody mentioned Will Davenport's wines and his Huxelraber. I thought I'd just buy a bottle of it on a punt. It was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. So you cannot make these rules. But in general, PDOs are really useful for helping both the wine region get its own identity and the consumer pick something off a shelf. Nothing's perfect and there are different shapes and sizes. It's only when you get to that smaller size that you can be super prescriptive.
Can we go to Sophia's point?
Sophia's point.
The title of the PDO. And I think this is the point. We started with Sussex.
Yes.
And then within that, we'll start getting a
Sussex, South Downs National Park, or
if we go that small, we'll go that
the Clay of the Weald or the Thames Valley chalk or lots of different geographical things.
If it gets rewritten and there's no reason why different PDOs can't overlap slightly because something's based on soil and something's based on there's no reason you can't do that. You can't have the sub AVAs, you've got something like you take California, like Alexander Valley, it's kind of weird because it kind of is in Sonoma, but also in Napa at the same time, and vineyards stretch over, different boundary lines, and this is here and there, what is it? It's on the the Napa side, the Sonoma
Yep.
side. It's on that side,
Well, ironically, the one part of the wine GB classification of the world that makes an awful lot of sense as a PDO is Thames Valley and Chilterns. I think that's a
because
valley,
you've
and
got,
it's these.
you've got the ridge, and you
Yeah.
can go anything that's in the rain shadow.
Yeah, quite right.
like the rain
Wine shadow.
Well,
But
Thames Valley's the
100
ridge and
Hills-
then the basin, isn't it?
Quite right, and we're going to need
But
that.
there's no reason you
They
can have
are
that
doing
cruise
amazing
style, or you
things.
can almost go in that. We could yabber for hours about this. And I
Yeah.
realise we're running.
Yeah.
You could almost have
You're
that
doing too
almost like
badly.
that Spanish pago system. That's like, okay, you don't fit into this, and so you are your own little vineyard here, and you're a pago. That's what it is. And I think it's going to be little bit by little bit, but we've got to make sure that we don't stifle experimentation.
Yep.
We don't stifle development because we've not
Yeah,
been doing
especially in
this.
the young industry.
We've not been doing
Yeah.
this as long as a lot of the countries
No.
with these ingrained systems.
No.
And you look at, we're putting a system in because we want to do quality wines.
Yeah.
A lot of places put these systems in because of people making just really shitty wines and
Mhm.
breaking rules and putting antifreeze in things and pretending things weren't what they were and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
And I
putting
don't think there's many people in that.
Algerian
in the UK.
wine in Burgundy.
Yeah, I don't think people are bringing a bunch of French Bordeaux in and blending it into their stuff. So I don't think we've got that worry.
No. But I think all of these
we
things.
don't have too many. From what I know in this industry, we don't have too many unscrupulous winemakers in the UK. We've got people who really want to push this forward. So we need to work
Quite
together,
right.
make sure it works for
Yep.
as many people as it possibly can, and it's got to make it easy for the consumer.
Yeah.
And I think if there's anything I have to say, English sparkling wine
It's
cannot
terrible,
be
mate.
the phrase for a
No.
traditional method English sparkling wine made with this and this and this.
And there've
Call
been
it
so
something
many
else.
arguments about this. What do you call it? So there's this famous person, Christopher Merritt, who wrote down before old Don Perignon did.
To be fair, that name
He-
has merit.
Name has merit. So people were talking about whether it was called merit method
While
or
we
something
yabber,
like
do you
this.
want to give people the option of wine of the night?
I could do, yes. I'll give people option of wine of the night. But what they've come up with is the Great British Classic method, which is not frankly
that
any better.
rolls off
the tongue, doesn't it?
The,
So
the old GBCM.
this is what the Nye Timbers are now trying to push, and yeah, look, it's another step above English sparkling and English quality sparkling wine. And there's a nice, pretty logo. I quite like the logo. It doesn't have to be a word that because if you look at Chianti, people recognise the symbol.
The Gallinero.
Indeed, the bird. So will that work? I don't know. I don't know at all. Let's have a final look at those. There's a definite salinity
Red currant,
to
tannin,
it.
strawberry, that slight pepperiness, that herbaceousness.
How about that? Well, let's pop it on to wine of the night, and which I think I've done. It's, it says it is, but it's not. It had to be something that didn't quite go right. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to hide this while we get the results in, and I'm going to hide that as well. This has been super fun. I don't know. What do you think?
I think this is a very weird one for wine of the night, isn't it? Because it's not like we've done a flight of 6 Chardonnays and go, well,
Yeah,
Chardonnay.
what the hell do you go for?
I think what this shows is if we are going to have a Sussex PDO, okay?
Yeah.
How do you include all these?
Well, that's a very good point.
And say this is Sussex style.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, and absolutely, and it's frustrating that both Merlot and Chasselas are not in the PDO, so those ones are not able to be put into the PDO.
But can you still call it a wine from Sussex? You just can't write Sussex PDO.
You can certainly put the address on as it's from Sussex. So all of these say on the front of it, single estate. Grown and bottled by Oxney Organic Estate, Hobbs Lane, Beckley, Rye, East Sussex, UK. But it doesn't say wine of Sussex. It says, in fact, wine of England on it. So
labelling's got to be a bit clearer.
Labelling's got to be a bit clearer. But it does bring on to the point of a slightly embarrassing thing.
None of these wines.
Not a single one of these wines is actually labelled wine of Sussex.
So that's the end of the PDO discussion.
But you will find it if you want to try a glass of Sussex. Go out, have a glass of the Rathfinny, have a glass of the Ridgeview, have a glass of the Oxney Sparklings. They're fantastic. Have a Hindley. They really are
I would
worthwhile, and
get,
especially with the coronation weekend.
get down there, get
down
round there, get drinking it, and you know, I'll tell you the best way to drink a glass of this wine or a bottle of this wine is to go and sit in the vineyards and meet the people and see what it's all about and go from there. And
shall we look at what the results are?
let's have a little look. See.
Oh my gosh! Okay, wow! That is a resounding win, and not. Goodness me, not what I was expecting at all.
I would have thought.
Okay,
my thoughts were going to be Chardonnay and Pinot Noir.
Yep, it's not. By a landslide, it is the rosé, which also was John Mobbs of Great British Wines Wine of the Month as well. It is a sensational rosé, and yeah, it is. It's an absolutely sensational rosé. But what is quite interesting is how tight, or most of the others are. We've got incredibly the narrowest margin. Second places was the Pinot Gris, which I think is excellent.
And then everything else is kind of tight,
super tight. So we won't go into that breakdown because it's not enough of a difference to really differentiate them. But what I will say is I should put the prices up, shouldn't I?
You should.
Remembered it for once. And what you see there, and I think if we were to run this again, $16.95 for that Stop and Pinot Gris. I think that is an absolute bargain. If I buy an Alsatian Pinot Gris, I'd be paying a lot more.
And I think the other thing we've got to roll down here, because I think for some people these aren't the cheapest wines on the planet.
No.
But if you look at the quality of the auctiony,
yeah.
If you had the same quality in Burgundy, what would you be paying?
Yeah, I mean, the 25 is great value.
Noir, what would you be paying out of Oregon? Stop and Pinot Gris. What are you paying if that's from?
I think they're only making 800 bottles of that Pinot Noir. If I'm not mistaken,
so
it was about
so it was
800
after.
or 1600. So yeah, it's a very small production run, and it takes up a lot of space. And poor old Nick and America are.
So if you love the wines,
yeah,
give
you
us
know
a
where
shout.
to find
They're
them.
all for sale. You know where to find it from us. So if you want a bit of a mix and match, give us a shout.
Yep.
You know, if you want 10 cases of something, go straight to the winery. It puts, you know, if it doesn't come via us, it puts more money into the winery's pocket, so it allows them to make more cool wines, more experimentation, more fun stuff. So yeah. But as always, absolute pleasure.
It has been. It's been a great fun. I've had a really good fun.
Get yourself.
I hope you have.
Get yourself. If you get some wine ordered tonight, I'll get it in the post tomorrow. It'll be with you in time for the coronation.
That's a very good point.
I'll get the post.
Hopefully, it'll arrive in one piece as well. If we're busy switching our shipping partner as well. But yeah, some fabulous wines, some real surprises and some delights tonight, and a wonderful audience. So we've greatly enjoyed it. Thank you very much for telling us what you'd like to know about why you come along to this, and it's pretty much tied between learning about wine and entertainment, which is great to know.
And if you'd like a copy of Alex's slideshow, please let me know, so I don't have to deal with him making another one ever again. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you ever so much. Next month, Piedmont. And it's going to be cool because we went there.
We did indeed. So yes, we took along the drone, we hired a Maserati, and we drove around Barolo. It wasn't the worst of few days in my life.
Tartufo.
Tartufo,
On that note,
indeed.
Have a great night.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Cheers. Bye.